Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon around enabling change. My name is Ollie Strong. I'm a technology recruiter at Sheehan. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we're a technology recruitment business with offices in London and the Northwest. We help technology and data-driven businesses to build great teams and hire great individuals. So this afternoon's topic has been inspired by the conversations we've been having over the last 18 months with our clients and community alike around how companies have needed to adapt and some of the challenges this has brought along. Our panel today will be sharing experiences and ideas that will hopefully inspire and open up great conversations. Please do interact with our panel throughout. This can be done via the Q&A section, and some of your questions will be answered as we go along and others at the end. And I'll be handing over to our host this afternoon, Karina Celis at Expedia.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Ollie, for having us and for starting it. Welcome everyone. I am Karina Celis. I work in Expedia, and I have been in the industry already for in Expedia for 2 years, long time in the industry, being a manager for probably more than 5 years, 6 years, something like that. Started as a developer and going through a lot of changes on the way, which is our main topic today. I want to welcome our panelists, and now we're going to have a little bit of an introduction from each one of them. Let's start out with Giorgos.
Thanks, Karina. Hi, everyone. My name is Giorgos. I'm a VP of Engineering at Tide, and I'm a software engineer myself with probably, at this point, more than 15 years experience, give or take. And I've been with Tide, like I said, 4 years. I started as an individual contributor, lead iOS engineer. Now I have been in a startup, which is now a scale-up. I've seen Tide changing quite a lot. So many changes have happened at Tide, and I'm happy to talk about them as well. And yeah, should I pass it on to someone else?
Yes.
Maybe Sam then.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Sam. I'm an engineering director at Pollen. I'm relatively new. I've been there just over 3 months now. I started out my career being a JavaScript engineer way back when. I'm not going to name a year. It's just like way back in the mist of time. I used to work on web trading platforms and then moved into team leadership and then engineering management. And then, yeah, I'm at Pollen as an engineering director now. So hand it over to you, Mattia.
Sam. Hi, everyone. I'm Mattia. I'm an engineering manager at Bulb. I've been in tech for about 15-ish years, starting as a developer. And then for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been in either leadership positions or engineering management positions. I've been at Bulb for the last 10 months, more or less. And yeah, being a startup in nearly scale up, yeah, there's definitely a lot of change happening there, especially in the last year. So very excited to talk about it today. John?
Hi, everybody. I'm John Thomas. Most people call me JT, and yes, I'm aware of what John Thomas means in England. I am also, like everyone here, I started as a software engineer. I'm not going to say how many years, but I will say that I started writing in Java about 4 months after it came out of its original beta. So that might give you a sense of how long I've been doing this. I spent most of my time, you probably can't tell from my accent, but I spent most of my time in North America. And then the last, I would say, few years, I spent a lot of time writing in defense. And then I switched over and I came to Pivotal Labs, where I was lucky enough to work at Pivotal for 3 years, and then to Amazon. And Amazon actually brought me over to the UK, worked in Prime Video and Alexa for 3 years there, before jumping to Deliveroo a year ago. And I'm a senior manager at Deliveroo now in the restaurant space.
Perfect. Thank you all for that. I guess that the first thing that we have to talk is about everything that has changed, right? So all the industries that we are working in have changes in the last 18 months. We know why. So let's think about that. Let's think about the changes that we're facing right now with the changes that we faced before pandemic. How has it affected your business? How has it affected the strategies that you used to work for changes for you? So I guess we can start with Mattia, maybe, or John, please. Whoever wants to start.
Who can reach the unmute first? All right. So it's interesting that you say that, right? Because how is it affected is a many-faceted question, because it's been a long year for everybody, right? And how it initially affected it and how it affected us in the end, or at least up to the present time, are very different stories, right? So initially, Deliveroo was on a growth path, right? And making steady progress against that growth path. And when pandemic hit, there were a few things at play. There were questions about a last round of funding that we'd received that was sort of being investigated by the CMA here in the UK. And that made an impact on us. And then as we locked down the nation, every restaurant in the country shut at the same time, which had a serious impact and risk on what we were going to be able to do. And then as it continued and the year progressed, right, things changed. And suddenly all of those restaurants that wanted to close wanted to open up again, and they needed delivery. And so actually the market underneath of Deliveroo and underneath of us actually grew, I would say, by a couple of years in the span of a few months. And during that time, Deliveroo became profitable. We never looked back. We built a lot of things to adapt and to help. We got involved in on-demand convenience and grocery to help people get bum roll here in the UK, to help people get food. And we are back into a place where we moved forward our plans to IPO. We're now a public company, and we're actually trying to catch up with the growth that's happened in the market. So it's been a really interesting ride and a lot of fun for us, but I would say it's really about different phases impacted us in different ways.
Yeah, and in your industry, Mattia, for example, that, I guess that you haven't seen a lot of COVID didn't impact you in that way, but
yeah, it's really interesting, because of course there are industry like John's or Sam's in travel that obviously have been impacted dramatically, but both being in the energy industry, change has been slightly different for us, because of course people still need their gas, their electricity, so people still need our products. But we've had to, at the beginning of the pandemic especially, we had to take a hard look at our finances, for example, because we know that a lot of the people might start to struggle paying their bills later on. So we had to really look at how we were doing things, making sure that we were being cautious with how we were spending our money. And then, of course, we have a large part of our company is made up of the people that answer the phone, for example, if you ring up because you have a problem with your energy. And that part of the company has had to really adapt overnight to work remotely. They really weren't used to it. So change has been different, but nevertheless very present over the last year.
Yeah, interesting. Sam, you has me in the travel industry. I guess that we can talk a lot about cancellations and how we have to ramp up our business to a lot of things that we were not expecting at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what happened for you.
So at Pollen, we're an experiences company, and what our aim is, or our mission is to be responsible for 3 out of the 5 of people's top 5 memories when they look back over their lifetime. And so what we'd started kind of pivoting towards, just as kind of lockdown was starting to happen, was this curated travel model. So we'll partner with an artist, a really famous artist, and create like a multi-day experience. And you can only get those experiences through Pollen. So what we did was kind of brought our strategic plans forward a little bit and sort of put the tech in place that would enable this curated travel model. So we kind of took advantage of the fact that there wasn't much kind of travel going on. And then we've just recently, last weekend, run our first couple of experiences in a good few months, and we've got loads of great learnings from the tech that we built for those experiences that we're then going to feed in. So we've kind of used it to our advantage, which is pretty good.
Good. And what about you, Giorgos? What happened for you? I guess that your experience might be the same as Mattia, right?
So it's interesting. Like, we used to operate at Tide in we had people all over the world. Like, we had like offices. We have 3 offices, and we have people working remotely already. So the change, like, to our employees, including myself, was actually very smooth. So overnight we went to all remote quite smoothly. There was some effort, of course, from the infra ops team, but it wasn't like there was no disruption. So we focused with the whole COVID. We focused on 3 things. One, it was the priority was ensure business continuity. Like, we won't have any downtime, any distractions, and we managed to do that really fast. The second one was actually to weather the storm. Like, we knew that, I mean, obviously there was a storm coming. We had really aggressive plans, growth plans. We didn't stop. We just made them, like, we reconsidered, and we basically just adjust them slightly, but we did scale massively as a business, and as, you know, as internally as employee base. And the last one was actually coming out of everything stronger. And I think we've done, like, looking at the future. We started working at the last quarter of the year on 2021. We made sure that everything is in place to actually help us achieve the goals. But it wasn't easy, right? There was lots of effort. We focused on our members. By members, I mean users. We call them members. But of course, we focused a lot of the effort into our employees. So we spent a lot of time, like, thinking about our people, because this is our most valuable asset, right? Our people.
Yeah.
And there was lots of changes there happening. Of course, like, everybody being remote, it's, how we had to change the ways of working. We were remote already, but not everybody now. And we had to put a plan for the future. Like I think as a company, it's in our DNA to look ahead in the future constantly. So we're very proactive instead of being reactive. So that's why we haven't seen a big impact. And if anything, we've seen positive impact, to be honest. Like, productivity, like, probably everybody has to say something about this. Productivity has been really high. I mean, including myself.
Yeah.
And we're planning for the hybrid now phase, where everybody's going to be on a hybrid mode. Personally, I loved being working at home, because it made me reevaluate many things as well.
Good. Now that we are getting into that topic, like, what are the working models that you discover while, because of this? How do you work with a change at the initial with your teams? How do you make sure that they were taking their time mentally to disconnect? For example, we had several discussions, like you said, Giorgos, like our performance went over the top. Like, everyone was overperforming, commits were going up. Of course, we were at home most days, so we were working extra hours without even thinking, because we were at home. So and then we have to create more discussions around, hey, remember, yes, you're at home, but you have to take your time off as well. How each one of you manage this with your teams?
I mean, I can continue and then pass it on. I think I lead by example. So I made sure I had to change the way I communicate, of course, like everybody else, because it's different thing, like seeing people at the office and they see you. Like, when you're remote, you have to basically be more visually present and basically put yourself out. So one of the things, probably if somebody from my team listening to this, they're going to pick it up. I started communicating what I'm doing. Like, I started new habits, which I usually wouldn't communicate to them. Started discussing a lot about my work-life balance as a lead, because I wanted to show the people that this is what I'm doing. So, it's okay for you to do that as well. I mean, I had a hard stop at 6 o'clock some days. I don't go work past 6. I may go back and do some extra work after hours, but you know, that's, I'm not going to advertise this, but I'm going to advertise that I'm stopping, right? And this is it. I'm going running every day. I'm publicizing this, like everybody knows I'm going running. It's in my calendar that I'm going running. So whatever I do to promote my work-life balance, which I'm really investing in it, I make sure that everybody has awareness about it. Yeah.
What about you, Sam? I think that you were going to say something.
So freedom and ownership are two of the pillars that Pollen's culture is built on, but with that comes responsibility, not only to take ownership of like fast moving challenges that we have, but also to take ownership of like your well-being. I think it's really important that a manager helps you with that, because I remember saying to somebody recently, like, Slack is infinite, so you have to impose your own boundaries on it, and if that means not installing Slack or email on your phone, just so that you have a really clear divide between work and home life, then go for it. I think it is really challenging, right? Because everybody's living, especially in London, in relatively small homes. And so your desk is really close to your lounge or your bedroom. And so it can be hard to switch off. And something that I was experimenting with was going for a walk at the end of the day as my like going home commute. And so I would publicize that, as you were saying, Giorgos, in my Managed by Sam channel, and saying, right, this is something I'm committing to, and I'm going to go and do this now. Like, what are you committing to? And kind of trying to lead by example there.
What about you, John?
I wish I could say I lead by example, but I have to take 5 days off next week because I have to finish my carryover by the end of June. So I haven't been leading by example. There have been some things that I've heard Giorgos and I think Sam say that I think I have done naturally, right? So for example, I ride my Peloton every day, and it's publicly, it's in my calendar. The other thing that I've done is I try to block as many of the one-on-ones together as I can, and then I try to walk for the one-on-ones, and I'll put the ears in, and I don't get as much in terms of like tracking and keeping action items and stuff as I used to in those one-on-ones, but it's been really nice, and I think it's really helped my team. I've even had, at one point, my boss said to me, we're going to do our one-on-one walking because I've seen that you do that, and I think it's a great idea. So I think that has helped out a lot. I would say the biggest thing that I have to watch out for, though, is it's really easy when you're in the office to see if someone is fading or slipping through the cracks, and to sort of make quick gut analysis of what's going on, right? Is somebody tired? Are they not feeling well? Is there a problem at home? And to very quickly just stop and say, hey, Sam, I have time for a cup of coffee. Do you want to take a quick walk? And just go get a walk in and find out what's happening. That's a lot harder in this environment, right? And so I think that's something that we can still get better at. And something that I've done is to try to implement something I learned at Pivotal Labs, which is to have I have a very large group made up of teams. And so I try to have a very large stand-up a couple of times a week, not to talk about project work, but just to check in and see everybody's face and maybe tell an interesting story or talk about things that are coming up or training events that are happening. And that's helped me a little bit to worry less about people slipping through the cracks and to get a sense of what's going on with people. Because at the end of the day, if I don't know that somebody's hurting or somebody's disappearing or somebody's burning out, which we've had huge burnout issues, right? Because we've been very, very busy through this whole period. And like you all said, people are working at home. So it's really important for me to keep those touch points, I think. And that's something that I think we've made some progress on with these sort of large group stand-ups and large group retros.
That sounds like a great initiative. What about you, Mattia?
Yeah, I pretty much echo everything that's been said. I especially love how the leading by example is important. Those rare times when I have to work maybe outside of normal hours or do some extra work, I make a point with myself to turn my Slack off, not make myself noticed by anyone. And I've actually had to teach some of the people in my team or some of my fellow managers to to try and work quietly when they're working outside of hours, to not create this sense that that it's expected somehow. Other than that, as John was saying, it's super important to notice if people are showing signs of burnout or of struggling with mental health. We've seen that a lot over the last year and 18 months. So at Bulb, we've made a point again of very regularly reminding people, signposting them, this is our mental health help, this is all the resources that you get. We don't know who needs to hear this, but here is a link to the wiki page that shows how to get help if you need it. And with my team, of course, always start the one-to-ones with just a chat, really, making sure that I connect with them as people and understand what's happening in their life. How are they living through this pandemic? Is there anything I can help them to make their life easier? I always tell them, put your family first, put your life first. Work will always be there waiting for you.
Yeah. And now that we're talking a little bit more trying to influence our team, right? Trying to guide them or go into this. What is your leadership approach? What does a leader then looks for you? Which approach do you normally follow? Are you a controlling one? Do you give a little bit more leeway? We have already discussed all about this. Me personally, I try to give a little bit more guidance, a little bit more flexibility for them to explore. And if they need help, I'm here. So kind of a mentor kind of thing. So I don't know. What about each one of you? Let's start with Mattia, you were just talking now. So.
Sure. I think the only possible answer here is it depends. There are a few dimensions that I look at when I'm giving someone direction or advice. One is, do they know why I'm asking them to do something? So do they know what we're trying to achieve? Is that clear to them? And do they know how? And this really changes how I approach my conversation with them and how much guidance I give them. Because if they understand the reason, but they don't know how to go about it, then I enter mentoring mode. I know that they understand the problem, but they might need a little bit of help in figuring out exactly what steps to follow. So either I mentor them directly or find them someone to pair with, find them the right help that they need. If they don't understand the why, though, that's a more important problem, because my role as their leader is to make that clear. So that really tells me that I need to make the objective more clear, usually using some coaching techniques, using open questions, trying to get them to come with me to the right answer.
Yeah, exactly. I saw a lot of you heading while he was talking. John, I think that you're heading the most.
Well, I was just going to say, I strongly agree. I think the only answer to that question is that it has to be situational, right? And that's something that we learn over time. I think most of us started out as engineers, and when you start as an engineer and you move into leadership, you tend to be a lot more hands-on when you start and downward focused on specific individuals in your team, making sure that people are unblocked. And then as you go through your career, you sort of learn different strategies and different approaches at different times. So there are times that you have to be very direct and very clear about what's happening. And then, I know a little bit later, we're going to be talking about growing people, right? So a big part of growing people is giving them more and more ambiguity to deal with, and then helping them to deal with that ambiguity. So, and as someone said while we were prepping for this, it's a great Bezos quote, right? So the only way you learn to be right a lot is by being wrong a lot, right? So you have to give people room to learn and to make mistakes. And to me, that's the most important thing. So it's very situational, and it depends on the person that you're dealing with, where they are. Are you in a coaching situation? Are you in a mentoring situation? Are you in a directing situation, which you will be at times? Things have to get done. Something's not getting done. You have to step in and direct. So it depends on all that. I will tell you one thing that's been a big part that I've learned over the last couple of years that is a big part of my philosophy, which is when I started early in my career, I spent a lot of time focusing on those people who are struggling the most. And I think that that intuitively makes sense when you're starting as a manager. And something that I've transitioned to is trying to build up leaders who can really help those people who are struggling, but spending the most of my time on the high achievers. Because what happens is if you don't spend a lot of time on the high achievers, eventually they feel ignored, and they are high achievers and they'll get bored, they'll feel ignored or undervalued, right? You have to spend as much time there, and then just make sure that you have mechanisms in place to focus on the people who are really struggling, because some of those people who are struggling are going to come out of it and be strong. And that's a great leadership opportunity for someone you're building up. Right. And some of them really, honestly, for whatever reason, they're not the right fit. They're not happy. They're not going to do that. And the opportunity cost of focusing on them is not focusing on the people who really are just killing it for you. So that's been a big change in sort of my philosophy over the last couple of years.
Yeah, recently we had a training where we were talking about coaching is about pushing someone, while pulling someone, and mentoring is pushing someone to do it themselves. So it's kind of a push situation. When you're doing one, you ask why, you ask a lot of questions, and in the other one, you just say what you want the person to do. So definitely. So how do you know the right balance, right? Because we have just talked about it depends on the situation, but how do you know the right balance between if a person needs both, how do you know when to coach and when to mentor?
If you take a coaching approach to somebody who doesn't know the answer, so coaching is to remove any mental blockers that somebody has, and like the idea is that they have the right answer, you're just helping them get there. If they truly don't have the right answer, that can be a really frustrating situation for them to be in. Yeah. So then you kind of switch into mentoring, teaching mode. Yeah. I think making it clear what the outcome is that you're aiming for and aligning on that outcome, and then agreeing a cadence on the way there that works for the person, and that you kind of know from experience, like, does this person have the right skill level in order to get there? And so if they don't have the right skill level, then they're going to need a bit more support, and they're going to need more frequent check-ins as well. Also, I kind of consider, because allowing somebody to make mistakes when it's safe to allow them to do so can be a great learning experience for them. But obviously, like, you wouldn't be a very responsible manager if you weren't letting people make big mistakes. So I look at kind of the blast radius and the risk of it a little bit when I'm figuring out how much support to give somebody as well.
Yeah. Any inputs on this, Giorgos?
Yeah, I think, like, summarize everything that everybody says. It really depends on the person and the situation as well. Depends on the urgency. I think, as managers and leaders, we have to make a risk assessment as well. Like, how risk averse we are. Like, it's okay people to fail, but not the company as well, right? You don't want to. And things get tricky when you're in a very fast-paced moving environment. Like, when you're actually moving really fast, that becomes even trickier, because your appetite for risk is actually less. You want to get things done, right? But I think that we need to find the balance, and it's not easy. Really depends on the person though as well. I know, some people are more, we do trust. It's not about trust really, but it's about confidence. We have more confidence on some people and the mistakes they make, and less confidence on others. And so this is where we actually become a bit more, I don't want to call it micromanaging, but become a bit more directive, which is okay, right? Even micromanaging, in some cases, it's okay. Like, you have to get things done. You have to ensure that the business won't suffer from any mistakes. So I will micromanage if I have to. I'll try to avoid it as hell. But, if I have to avoid critical and bad thing happening to the business, I will definitely not allow it. So,
yeah. Talking a little bit about, I think that is a little bit related. Like, if you think about last time that you made a process, a change, and then someone was a little bit more resistant to it, and you had to coaching them and try to help them to get into the point. like what strategy you use, what successful methods can you use to like make sure that you can influence someone that is resistant to a change, whatever the change is?
Well, I mean, change is a big topic, right? So I think the first, I think Mattia mentioned is the why. Like, if you can't communicate the why, like why somebody needs to change, especially when they don't want to change, you're going to have a really hard time changing them. And also the vision, like where do you see them going? Like this change, where does this change lead, right? Why do I need to do that change? And where will we go? What's the end state? If you can't communicate the end state, the vision, like it is happening today, like it's happened already, you're going to have a hard time changing somebody who doesn't want to change.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, I mean, it's a whole strategy around it. Like there's lots of change management frameworks that deal with that change. It's not individual though.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Somebody might be resisting change for a reason that's not immediately obvious. So I found it really, really useful in the past to have a one-to-one with somebody. And it can happen that they actually then become an advocate if you've had a really great coaching conversation with them, because they might actually be threatened or feel insecure about something that's not going to happen, but it's not been obvious until you've had that conversation with them.
Yeah, definitely.
Most people are afraid of getting out of the comfort zone. So a change is actually, like, by default is taking you out of some comfort because it's a new thing. So
yeah. And I think that especially in the last 18 months, that was something that a lot of people have to struggle with. Like, the comfort zone was going all day to the office and having meetings with everyone and, working on whiteboards and having discussions around something. And then we came into this critical thing where, this new critical war where we have to do everything quick because we have to respond to it, right? Yeah, so thinking about the new normal, the new world where we hope we're going to go now, what are the changes you are doing right now to make sure that your team is comfortable with the new normal? Maybe let's start with John.
So I think we've done a lot, right? We've really adapted, I think, in a lot of ways toward working here for a while, right? And I think that for most companies, a hybrid approach is in the cards for a very long time, if not forever at this point, right? So being able to support that has been a big part of it. I do think there are some things that we're still sort of figuring out how to get good at, which include having social events and creating those bonding times together. I think training is another one where it's like the whole world has trained, right? The whole world doesn't, go off to San Francisco or Berlin for a big conference anymore. All those conferences are online. I think in the last 2 weeks, we had Google I/O and the AWS EMEA event completely online, completely free, right? So I think that we have to learn how to do all of these things a little bit better. Another example that comes to mind is a lot of companies offer gym memberships, subsidized gym memberships. Well, nobody can go to the gym, right? But now there's all of these different sort of online services that can help out. So I think that we've done a lot. I think that there's still a lot to figure out. And I think most of that has to do less with the how to survive as a company and how to be productive, and more with the how to create a sustainable environment where everybody's thriving.
Yeah, definitely. Mattia, do you want to add something?
Just what you just said, John, really resonates with me, particularly at this point in time. I think it's critical that companies put their employees as people first, understanding that we're all in this situation of the element of change fatigue. I think after 18 months of every day changing and something completely different, we now see a lot of anxiety in what's going to happen next. Is this going to be the new normal, or is it just another phase? So as leaders, we need to really put a lot of thought and attention into treating everyone as individuals, understanding their preference, what works for them. And for example, with my team and in my company, we reassure people a lot that yes, the company might like a particular direction, but no one would be forced to do anything that they feel unsafe to do or uncomfortable to do. And yeah, it's I think it's just super important to stress that with people.
Yeah, of course. Of course. So now thinking about the teams and how we have been working right now, how do you know that your team is high performing? So we talk about performance went up because of the pandemic. We talk about that, you know, there were also burnout because of it. So now that we're getting into the new normal, how do you know for your team to still create impact, but at the same time, not burn them up again or get them out of the burnout if they are already burned out because of everything changed, right? So how do we know, how do we measure that we are creating a team that's high impact team?
It's quite interesting, actually, when we talk about high performing teams, we always talk about the route to get there. But if everybody's really like performing great and engagement's like really high because people are doing lots of work, we don't really talk about how to come back from getting past there. I think squad or team health checks are a really good way outside of the manager-managee working relationship and getting feedback and a temperature check that way. So regular squad health checks. I think you have to be quite careful with engineering metrics. You wouldn't necessarily want to look at frequency of pull requests, for example. Mm-hmm. So I think like it's good to look at the team level, like the team delivering quality software in a sustainable way and building up that regularity. That for me is a good sign of a high performing team. Yeah,
definitely. And imagine that in this new world, we need now to get more leaders, right? For this new high performance team or teams that are performing in a way. What are you doing right now when you're hiring great leaders? Like how can you hire a great leader in this time? What do you look for? What specifically capabilities are you looking for at the moment? I guess Giorgos. You're laughing, so let's go for you.
I think this is a subjective and objective at the same time. So because each one of us have its own idea of what we're looking in a leader, right? I definitely have. But also you look at the, sorry, I'm getting confused. Objective, subjective. Yeah, I'm getting also the objectivity of this here, which is basically what the company is looking for, right? Is as company-wide. So at Tide, we have a growth framework and we have an engineering growth framework, and that touches leadership as well, of course. It's not just about individual contributors. And it encompasses basically not only skills, but also attributes, behaviors, but also values of the company. We call it the Tide values. We have 3. And when we interview, we're looking at this, and my input, my personal opinion, right? The subjectivity of this goes inside the growth framework, has gone in because I've actually inputted, right? It's not my work, it's actually everyone's work at Tide. And this is how we hire. We hire people, I don't want to say culture fit because it's very debatable and controversial, but when we talk about, I would actually say it, when we talk about culture fit, we're talking about not hiring people identical to us, but something with someone who aligns with the same values we have, behaves like, within guardrails of what we have as behaviors. So this is how we hire, and every step in the interview process is designed in a way to actually evaluate specific things. Like if it's a technical step, obviously it's going to evaluate technical stuff together with some soft skills. If it's a leadership step, it will evaluate probably more on the other stuff, right? Like communication, listening, impact, if that's possible in an interview. Yeah.
Sam, what about in your team? Do you have any interesting hiring approaches different than the norm? I guess that most of us probably have what Georgia just mentioned, a cultural fit, an engineering fit. Are you following the same patterns?
Yeah, so there's a guy called Lou Adler who's got years and years of experience as a recruiter, and he's come up with this performance-based hiring process that we really follow at Pollen. So we're looking for various kind of factors, and we'll ask, it's an evidence-based process. So we will say, can you tell us about a time when, and that helps us to understand what was the scope of the impact, the complexity, managing multiple dependencies. And we ask people for examples, and that helps us, look for the right kind of approaches. So we don't look at a kind of laundry list of skills. We look at how that person's use those skills in kind of real situations, and from that we gain confidence about whether they can do the role that we're offering. So I guess like I've kind of got my own sort of mental model from over the years as well about like spheres of influence and scopes of impact and complexity. They obviously get bigger as you go up through an organization. Communication and getting on well with others and bringing folks along on the journey and being clear about the why and the vision direction that you're moving in, they're things that I look for in leaders.
Yeah, I think that there is an acronym for it, right? To when you're talking about when they're asking a question on hiring, you have to talk about a situation and then an action, and then I think that there's an acronym, but I cannot remember the acronym.
There's situation, behavior, impact, but then there's a star one as well. I don't know what.
That's situation, task, activity, results, I think.
Yes, star one, that's the one. John, you coming, now working on Deliveroo, coming from Amazon, you must have a lot of experience on high performance team, hiring leaders to create high performance team.
So when I left Amazon, I actually had my 500th hiring manager interview, and it was a combination of hiring manager and bar raiser role interview in the time that I was there, and I've done over 100 since I've been at Deliveroo. Now, to be fair, I spend most of my time focusing on behavioral interviews, right? But there's sort of a few things that I've taken, right? One thing is there's a balance when it comes to hiring and recruiting that's really important to keep in mind, which is you're going to lose, as a company with natural attrition, you're going to lose some of your highest performers. It's just the nature of the beast, right? And so if you're not looking to hire people who are at least as good as what you have today, then naturally what's going to happen is the talent level of your organization is going to go down over time. So you have to be looking, you have to hold a standard really, really high when it comes to hiring. That's the first thing. The second thing, and this is sort of a trick that I do when I do interviews, is I try to be really clear up front. There's a phrase that I learned at Amazon that we also do at Deliveroo very much, which is tell me about a time. In fact, you'll see in my feedback, sometimes it'll say TMAAT, right? And that's really important in these interviews because people come into interviews and they want to give you an answer to the question that you're asking. And if they can't think of an immediate answer, they'll automatically flip into, well, this is how it should work, or this is how I do this, right? And so what I try to really, really focus on when I'm looking for a leader is I say, tell me about a time, like, and be really specific. Tell me I was working with Sam on this thing and this other thing happened. And I say, give me as much detail as you can. Pretend we're in a pub. If you're watching this online, you've interviewed with me, I've probably said, pretend we're in a pub and we're just having a conversation and we're telling war stories. Tell me about the time that this happened to you. And then the last thing that I do a lot is I really try to get stories of the worst thing that could ever happen. Like, so I'll tell them, I'll say, tell me about a time that you took a risk, that you did something and it did not work out at all. And I want to hear about that. And then sometimes I'll even give them an example to put them at ease about something that I absolutely blew up, right? Just so that I can get that, because I want to see how they experience things and what they've learned from it, right? So those are, for what it's worth, those are some of the things that I do. But there's just a lot, right? There are so many people to hire, and everybody's trying to hire them at the same time right now. So
definitely. Anything to add on these regards, Mattia, from your experience as well?
Well, everyone else here has mentioned a lot of great stuff already. Maybe just one thing that I found helps in finding good leaders, and this is valid but whether you're hiring a manager, but also for individual contributors, because we still want them to show good leadership and good communication and ability to influence others. We want to see people at their best, and often when they come to an interview, people are stressed and worried and anxious. So we actually send them a guide about what we're going to be look for and the sort of questions we might ask, so that people can come prepared with examples that still show about a time they did something, but that actually show the behaviors that we're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's a great discussion, I think. Definitely one of the things that we also do at Expedia is the cultural one. And like John said, we always try to go into the think about a time. Like we always try to keep our answers on your experiences instead of trying to go for, can you imagine if you had a team that will make this? Because they're not real situations, and behaviors on non-real situations is not the same as when you are pressure and you're actually living it. I think that most of us will agree on that, especially now that we never thought that we would be on a COVID situation and everything changes so hard. Great, thank you so much. I think that this covers all the topics for today. So there is one question in the Q&A that I can see, which I am going to go through it, I guess. Or Ollie, do you want to jump in and get the question?
Yeah, I agree. Thanks very much for that, and great discussion so far. So yeah, just touching on the first question that we've had come through. So it does hide in the fact that you and fellow managers are working overtime. Would that not set a bad example amongst management? Surely management would have to have a good work-life balance and not hide that. So, Giorgos?
Yeah, actually, I think I started the conversation with this, and then Mattia actually said something as well. So look, I mean, first of all, work-life balance this is not a dogma, right? And it's not the same. Pretty sure like each one of us here, they have a different approach and the different understanding what work-life balance is. For me, it's actually working 5 hours a day. It could be like 15 hours a day. This is not the same for everyone else. So when we talk about work-life balance are you happy with how you've distributed your workload and your life, right? And it's very personal. There's no one formula, one recipe. So when I said, like I sometimes go after hours and do some work, it's not because I'm forced to or have to, it's because I want to. And, I'm working on strategy lots of the times, right? Of course, I have ideas that come into mind, like when I'm watching Netflix, I'm going to stop Netflix and then go and do some work because this is who I am. What I'm trying to say is that I'm not expecting this. This shouldn't be the norm. People should be free to design the workload as they want. And this is actually a good work-life balance in my eyes. So we're not talking about overworking ourselves, but not advertising others. I'm talking about actually making sure that everybody understands that they need to be happy, they need to be healthy.
So Giorgos, something that I've started doing is I try to avoid using the term work-life balance anymore. And now I try to use work-life harmony, because then the idea is at times it may be out of balance, and that's exactly what you want at that time in that season, right?
Yeah.
I like it.
Okay, great. And moving on to another question that we've had come in as well. So at what point during the hiring process is a decision made on what tribe or squad an engineer joins? Is recruitment siloed, or do you encourage cross-tribe hiring?
I can say about what we do in Expedia. So in Expedia, we try to be cross-tribe hiring. So everyone from the different teams from our, at least in our small part of Expedia. I work with EPS. So in EPS, we try to have everyone at the end, have panelists from different teams, because we have always positions open for all different teams. And then during the final meeting of everyone, we decide which team this person will be best, depending on the offers that we have available.
And Giorgos, do you have anything to add on that?
Sorry, I lost half of it because of network.
So I'll repeat the question. So at what point during the hiring process is a decision made on what tribal squad an engineer joins? Is recruitment siloed, or do you encourage cross-tribe hiring?
So no, I mean every company is different, I guess, right? So at Tide, we depends on the situation. We have people who we are hiring for specific role, so we know that where they're gonna go, and we have people who are hired like in general, because we have the hiring targets. We know we want to scale the team in general, right, overall, and then we take a decision where to place them, like based on the priorities of the business. We're not very vertically split at this stage, and that might change in the future. So for now, we actually hire like across the board. So for example, my dojo, we call the Partners Dojo. I'm hiring front-end engineers, iOS, Android, and web, and I'm distributing them to teams. I'm allocating to teams, sometimes ahead, sometimes after we join. But the onboarding process basically covers, it starts from generic onboarding process across the company, like across technology, things we're using, and then it becomes more, like the last few weeks, they become more focused on the team that the individual will join.
Okay, great. And did anyone else want to add to that, or shall I move on to the next? Move on to the next. And yeah, so another question that's just come in. How has the pandemic or generalized work from home impacted technology decisions and software engineering practices?
I think that in our case, it changed a lot at the beginning. So we had a specific way of working. And then because of the pandemic, we basically had to stop. We were just starting the quarter and when the pandemic hit. So we had to stop everything that we had already on the quarter and do this new thing that we were not thinking about doing. When I was saying at the beginning, in our case, it was the cancellations. Like we already had a cancellation system where we were not expecting for a big cancellation bulk kind of thing that it happened at a time. So we had to improve a lot on that. So after that, we realized that we needed to be a little bit more agile in the way that we were working. So we actually decided on change during the pandemic the way that we were taking decisions on what is best to work at that time. And now new work, we are trying to go into a hybrid mode, into what we did during that time of the pandemic and what we used to do because it used to work. So we are trying to go into hybrid mode, into that what we had before and that we had now. So yeah, so I think that happened to us.
Okay, Giorgos, anything to add there?
I guess same thing, like depends on the business, actually, the company, the nature of the company, but we had to change slightly. We didn't change the engineering practices, they didn't change much because, like I said, we already operating semi-remotely, like we had people working from home like a few days a week anyway. So, you know, some changes, but not too many from our side on this part. We became a bit more agile. I will agree with Karina. We became a bit more agile because we had to adjust. It was actually, yes, it was a Q2 was starting. And I think OKR cycle has just reopened it, like mid-April. We reopened everything. Like again, we started planning for the already started quarter. So we had to adjust some things.
Okay. And then as an engineering manager, do you often work hands-on, i.e. co-commits to production systems at times, or is it more of strategy building, proof of concepts and mentoring developers? You want to answer that one?
I can give it a try if you want. This is a big, it depends. It depends on what the company wants from you as an engineering manager, really. Engineering manager is one of those job titles that means very different things in different companies. And there are actually some great articles that maybe we can link afterwards on this topic and some different common styles of engineering managers. But there are some companies where indeed the engineering manager is very technical, is pretty much the technical leader, and they would write a lot of code and lead the architecture. In other companies, which is my case, for example, at Bulb, the engineering manager has a technical background and can step in if need be, but we tend to mostly facilitate the process and rely on the expertise of the engineers instead to do the actual implementations.
Okay, great. Does anyone like to add to that, or should we move on to the next question as well? Move on. So this one's for John. So you mentioned remembering to focus time on high performers as well, which is a good point, and developing others to help those who are struggling. Would you be able to expand on who the others are, maybe how you achieve this development as well?
I mean, I think it's situational, but I think in some cases those others could be an engineering manager over a smaller team. In a lot of cases, I think, you know, when we're using that as an opportunity to bring people up, I think it's a great opportunity for senior engineers or staff engineers to really step in, because honestly, they're the ones who are usually seeing what's going on first, whether it be that, you know, this person is struggling with things that they wouldn't normally be struggling with, or they haven't really made any progress in the last few weeks, or they're not, they haven't been showing up to backlog grooming meetings, right? So it's really, they'll bring this information forward, and it's usually something that you want to first practice empathy and understand what's going on for the person who's struggling, and then step in and figure out the right approach to helping them through it. So rather than investing myself in that process and saying, okay, I've gotten this feedback, it looks like Ollie is struggling, so I'm going to set some time up with Ollie, I'm going to find out what's happening. What I'll do is I'll spend some time talking to the tech lead or possibly the engineering manager, again, situationally, to say, okay, well, let's talk about what we do in a situation, what I would do in a situation like this. And this is a great opportunity to sort of learn leadership and figure out and help. And usually they'll be open to doing that, right? Sometimes you'll get that response of, I don't want to be a manager. And what I'll focus on is, and this is a big conversation I have a lot, I say the higher you get in an organization, there's a Venn diagram between being a manager and being an individual contributing leader. And the section in the middle gets bigger the higher you go. Right. So we're doing less and less different things and more similar things. And part of that is building up the people around us. Right. So I'll focus on saying, you know, this is a great leadership opportunity for you. And by the way, this person will never forget that you're the person who stepped in and helped them. So I sort of try to work with them that way. I don't know if that answers the question specifically, but hopefully.
No, that's great. And we'll finish off on this question and leave the last one for the blog, because conscious of both time and weather outside. But what are your approaches to hybrid working now, in particular, as offices start to be opened up, but others remain remote? I know this could be one that's under NDA, but if anyone would like to answer that, we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to, but I think I can say that we are looking into hybrid like every other company. I don't think that's changing, right? I think as a company, what we're trying to do is let the people decide how they want to work. and we give them the flexibility. If people want to come to the office 5 days, they can do that. If they want to come less, it's up to them. So, without disclosing too many details, this is what our approach. Now, will that change a year from now? I don't know. I can't predict the future, but I think depends on the outcomes and results of this. So, and my bet is no. My bet is hybrid is here to stay. So,
That's great. And Sam, would you like to add to that at all?
I was just thinking the challenge will be not to kind of go back to how it was before if you were really based in the office. So you've just got to be mindful that there's going to be folks in the meeting who are dialing in remotely. And so we need to then transport all of the great lessons that we've learned from all of us being fully remote to being in that hybrid model, and just making sure that we include everyone.
Yeah, actually, GitLab's remote playbook describes this, and hybrid is actually the most difficult way of working. So it's not going to be easy.
I think that one of the things that the pandemic opened to all the companies is to allow to actually create a framework on working from home and working from the office. Like for us, for example, we didn't used to, like, it was kind of a team per team approach, and sometimes even location approach. So because we have so many offices. So one of the things that this pandemic kind of brought to life is we don't have a way of working. Like it doesn't particularly exist for most of the companies. Just let's see what happens. So I think that is very, in a way, I think that most of the companies will take the advantage to create a framework and to say, this is the way that we work, and this is what we want for us. This is what we think that it will work for us from now on. And which, it then has a new joiner or someone that is already in the company. You can decide if it works for you or not. But before, it was very much in the gray area, right? So.
That's great. So look, we'll wrap it up there. As mentioned, conscious of time and the weather, but a big thank you to our panelists and also everyone that's joined. This will be followed up in our blog and a recording shared, which you will also find on our YouTube channel as well. But yeah, thank you very much to everyone for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
This was so much fun. I hope it was valuable for people. I know I learned from all of you guys, so thank you.
Yeah.